Stellar Blade is a game we were all extremely hyped for, and we were hoping that if this sold extremely well, Sony may have listened to our pleas for it to be uncensored, and now we're finding out even more sales numbers, and it is beating new releases on the PlayStation like Sea of Thieves in the PSN US chart and is topping disc sales in Japan. I have a few things to show off, but before we get into the topic, if you enjoy the content I create, check out the links in the description, follow me on social media, and consider supporting through Patreon or through YouTube memberships. Now, I was a big fan of Stellar Blade, and it was such a shame to see the censorship surrounding this game because we were all so excited for a new game to release, a new franchise to launch that was not going to feature censorship, but unfortunately, Sony did not allow that, even though days before release, Shift Up was boasting about how it was uncensored worldwide. When the game finally launched, we found out that yes, it did feature censorship, which was unfortunate because it was such a good game. It was a really solid experience that I would play a sequel of or DLC of, but now we're finding out even more sales charts, and it just proves how hyped people really were and how many people decided to still play the game. This is a PlayStation Lifestyle article I wanted to start with. Stellar Blade beats Sea of Thieves in PSN US chart. Sony and Shift Up have yet to reveal Stellar Blade's launch sales, but the game was Japan's best-selling new disc release for a fortnight ending May 5th, and additionally, Stellar Blade beat Microsoft's Sea of Thieves to settle for the second most downloaded game in the PlayStation Store's US chart. Now, according to unofficial sources, it's rumored that it sold 1 million copies within 24 hours of launch, but of course, take it with a grain of salt. We don't have any confirmation of this, but it has been a number that has been floating around the internet since release, and I personally, after seeing this, would guess it sold several million copies at this point, maybe 3 to 4, but of course it also says that yes, it did beat Microsoft's Sea of Thieves to settle for the second most downloaded game in the US chart, but it did actually fail to top Sea of Thieves in Europe. But of course, thanks to this newly released PlayStation 5 version of Sea of Thieves, it is on the charts. It, did beat it out, which I completely understand. We already know that that's a massive game, and when it comes to new franchises, people definitely are a little bit more hesitant to support them at release, so that's not super shocking, but it does say the Japanese sales charts come to us courtesy of Famitsu. During the period starting April 22nd, ending May 5th, Stellar Blade shifted 67,131 copies at retail, but of course keep in mind that these are physical sales. We do not have any digital sales numbers, so that will be interesting to see. Of course, we previously heard a report from the same source confirming that Stellar Blade's physical copies were selling out in Japan, and we were not exactly sure if that was to do with short supply or, of course, gangbuster sales, but either way, it was selling out in Japan, which is fantastic to hear for, of course, Shift Up, and going forward, we also have it topping other sales charts as well. As you can see, for the US and Canada, Helldivers 2 was beating it out for the month of April, but Stellar Blade did only release on April 25th, so it makes sense. Helldivers 2 had the rest of the month to, rack up sales numbers, but of course we are still seeing Stellar Blade in the top 3, which is all you could really ask for with a new game and a new franchise that people definitely heard a lot of mixed information about leading up to release. I mean, game journos, these activists were trying their very best to bury this game, from the graffiti controversy to claiming the game wasn't actually censored when other people were saying it was censored, then the media calling it sexist and appealing to things like the male gaze. Like, there was a lot of negativity surrounding this release simply because of the media, so it's not shocking to imagine that there were some people who decided to cancel pre-orders or, wait until full launch. So it will be interesting to see what May's sales numbers are for this game. I think they're still going to be pretty solid. And again, I think that this is a game that is worth your time. Unfortunately, yeah, though, it is censored, and I know a lot of people definitely wanted to wait, hoping that Sony would respond, and it would be amazing if they did, but I wouldn't hold my breath. Sony over the years has censored so many games. It's been so unfortunate, but of course, there's even more amazing sales numbers for Stellar Blade. It debuted first on the French charts. It also debuted first on the Swiss charts. It debuted first on the UK charts. I mean, there really is not a lot stopping this game and ultimately its success. And I know so many people did decide to, of course, keep their pre-orders and try to stick it to these activists, and also hoping that, Sony may see it and go, let's greenlight a sequel, let's greenlight a DLC, let's do as much content as possible surrounding these beautiful, beautiful characters. And at the end of Stellar Blade, maybe a little bit of a spoiler alert, they do say that Eve will return. We do not know if that's going to be DLC or a sequel. I personally believe that they're going to primarily focus on a sequel, just because the game does have 3 endings, and all of the endings are pretty solid to have a couple of years gap of content. It's not like they leave it on a cliffhanger that they wanted to address in DLC. Obviously, it would be great if they'd put out a bunch more content for this, but at the same time, I completely understand why there are people who do not trust Shift Up, and of course don't trust Sony. I've never trusted Sony, and even though I was still really excited for this game leading up to launch, I was hoping that maybe they were going to be different, but I was expecting, unfortunately, something to go wrong with this release, and then we saw it. Again, activists were attacking it over the graffiti and the sex appeal in the game, and that's not very new. These people are massive, massive hypocrites, and they will praise games with sexuality like Baldur's Gate 3, where you can customize your dick and ball jiggle physics, and they also praise games like Hades because it's so sex positive, but they will not praise a game like Stellar Blade, and they demand censorship when a female character showing a little bit too much cleavage, or there happens to be unintentional graffiti next to a light up sign that's an R. And of course, just because they got offended by it doesn't mean anyone else got offended by it. But it will be interesting to see going forward over the next few weeks how Stellar Blade sales, are able to compete with other new releases. There's not a lot coming out in May, so that will be fascinating to see. I still think that it is going to stay in the top 5 for the entire month. Only time will tell, but for now, that's all that I really had to discuss in this video. Let everyone know your thoughts in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this, give it a like, and if you didn't, give it a dislike. I appreciate your support either way, but I will talk to you all again in the next video really soon.